So once Mr. Gall has a number, I'll turn it back to him, and then we'll get him to read these. These are the essentially the rules that we've been following recently, and just so that we have everyone kind of on the same page, and the best way to organize, keep our time limits as best as we can. I know we are a half an hour behind what we're hoping for on the agenda, but this way, hopefully, we can make sure everyone gets has the chance to have their voice heard, but also that we are being most efficient with our time. Mr. Gall, do you have?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I will note that we also have the live stream is up. And so you should have all seen sort of a notice within Zoom that we are now being live streamed. And so you're sort of accepting that. And then we have 36 votes in favor of the resolution with 1 abstention. And with that, if you are okay, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to read the standing rules.
Yes, if I get Mr. Gall, if you could read the standing rules, and then I might get our parliamentarian, Mr. Mina, to just make a couple comments on them. But yes, Mr. Gall.
Turn it on anyway.
And I have other people please mute themselves. Thank you.
It's those crazy Fraser Valley people. So MNGA standing rules. The rules of order below are intended to facilitate progress, including MNGA delegates in debate and decision-making, and ensure fairness, equality, and common sense. 1, the meeting will be run in accordance with the relevant provisions of the MNBC Constitution and MNGA Act. 2, a delegate who wishes to speak at the MNGA will request to do so, wait to be recognized by the speaker, and open by stating their name and community. 3, on each issue or motion, a delegate is entitled to speak up to 2 times for no longer than 3 minutes each time. Speaking a third time or longer than 3 minutes will require permission from the assembly. 4, if an individual has questions, they may ask 1 follow-up question within the same 3-minute time slot. 5, to speak a second time on the same motion or agenda item, a delegate must wait until those who wish to speak on it for the first time have done so. 6, debate must be related to the pending motion or agenda item. The speaker may alternate between proponents and opponents to a pending motion if needed. 7, previous question is not in order prior to 30 minutes of discussion on a motion or agenda item unless approved by unanimous consent. 8, a motion to amend a motion or agenda item is not in order prior to 5 delegates speaking to the main motion unless approved by unanimous consent. And 9, delegates must observe decorum, must avoid personal attacks and disorderly or discourteous behaviors, and are expected to help maintain a safe and respectful meeting environment.
Thank you, Mr. Gall. I'll turn to our parliamentarian, perhaps just a couple comments on the standing rules and the content there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you again. My job is to serve as an impartial advisor on rules of order, so I'll be silent unless I'm explicitly asked to speak, and my comments or my advice will be directed primarily to Mr. Pelletier, the speaker. So I teach Robert's Rules of Order. It's a book of 700 pages, and in your meetings, you probably use less than 1% of what's in that book. So the standing rules are intended to simplify the process. It's how we make decisions, how we debate, how we engage individuals and their knowledge and their wisdom and achieve 3 things. The 3 things are good engagement, level playing field. Everybody gets the same opportunity to speak and inform the assembly of what their views are, what their nuggets of wisdom may be relevant to the issues at hand. So engagement, level playing field. The second is good time management, and that's always a challenge. I find that in my work, that is one of the greatest challenges is to balance the need to hear as many individuals as possible while at the same time getting the agenda moving forward, and including on your agenda you have quite a few resolutions that are scheduled to take the day tomorrow, to take the day on Sunday. Even at that, it can get into time management challenges. So the suggestion I would make is, although you're under these rules, you'll be entitled to speak up to 3 minutes each time. My observation is that if each of you insisted on exhausting that every single time, then you will not get very much done. So partly what these are intended to do is to establish the playing field, but you don't have to take advantage of the entire entitlement every single time. If each of you use those with a judicious and thoughtful manner, you'll make enough room to deal with all the agenda items and make room to make everybody make time available for different perspectives to come in and enrich the environment. So the thought is, for example, if the same comment is made repeatedly and everybody seems to be in favor of the motion, then maybe you want to withhold your comment and allow things to end. And so there's enough time made for other people to speak and enough time made for other issues to be addressed. So good engagement, level playing field, good time management. The end result needs to be, as some of you so eloquently put it, we need to achieve informed decision. And that's something that Robert's Rule does not have in all the 700 pages. It does not talk about informed decision making, and yet it is critical to an assembly as important as yours, to the functioning of a body, to delivering good democracy and good decision making. I'll end my comment with this, and I'll be here for the rest of the until Sunday to serve you on an as-needed basis. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Mina. So these will be the standing rules by which I'm going to follow, I'll do my best to follow, and I'll ask everyone to assist in doing that. And I think we'll have a productive and efficient meeting. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to put these in front of everyone so that we're all on the same page, and to have that our parliamentarians kind of speak to that. We've already heard today there are new presidents and people involved in this process. And I think it's always helpful to have that information just so that we can all kind of be working well and our best together. So the next item on the agenda is the review and accepting the minutes of the 2021 MNGA. And so that should be in your kit. I'm just going to see what pages those are. The 2020 MNGA, we're starting on page 3, essentially page 5. And going on for the next couple pages. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to review those. I will ask for someone to move that we review and adopt the minutes. I'll wait for hands raised. Director Hooper.
I'll pass a motion to adopt the minutes.
Thank you. Moved by Director Hooper. Do we have a seconder? And I see Director Gervais. I presume you're seconding?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I'll open it up if there's any questions, corrections, or anything that is needed with regards to the 2021 MNGA. And if you wish to just raise your hand. Director Gervais, do you have any comments or questions regarding the minutes?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands go up. I'll just give it another minute or so. And if not, I will propose that we pass this, and again, not seeing there's any discussion, there's likely no issues with it, and we'll see if we can pass this by way of unanimous consent. So second call for any comments or questions on the minutes. Third call, not seeing any hands coming up. Okay, so what I will suggest is that we accept the minutes for the 2021 MNGA by unanimous consent. So if you are not in favor of accepting the minutes, please raise your hand at this time. Otherwise, we'll see this as unanimous consent. So give it a minute or about 30 seconds. If there's anyone that's wanting to raise a hand to oppose adopting it. Not seeing any hands. All right, then we can mark the review and acceptance of the 2021 MNGA minutes as adopted unanimously. Thank you very much. We will next go to the review and accept minutes from the 2021 special MNGA, which I believe, that should be the 2022. Oh, sorry, this is the 2021 special MNGA. My apologies. Yes, not the one we just conducted. That would be at pages. So just trying to find the page number. Page 23. And if I could again have someone that's willing to move and second, I do see President Smith.
Yeah, I will move that. Thank you.
Thank you, President Smith. Do we have a seconder? I see President Fisher. I saw a hand raised. Yeah, second.
Do you need me to say I second it?
Well, maybe you had a point of order. I'm not sure.
No, I second it.
Thank you very much, President Fisher. So we'll go through again the same process. Is there any questions, comments, discussion items with regards to the acceptance of the 2021 special MNGA draft minutes? So yeah, you know, we should have Mr. Mina speak more often, because after he spoke about efficiency, and now look how fast we're tearing through this. This is great. Not seeing any hands coming yet. I will propose that we accept the minutes from the 2021 special MNGA by unanimous consent. So again, at this time, if you do not wish to pass or have an issue, please raise your hand. I'll give it about 15-20 seconds, otherwise we will proceed as adopted. All right, not seeing any hands or any objection, then we will accept the 2021 special MNGA minutes as adopted. Thank you very much, everybody. And the next item on our agenda is the acceptance of written reports. And so I hope another one that everyone has received those, but we will need a mover and a seconder to accept the written reports. And I do see President Dodman.
I'd like to move that we accept those reports. Thank you.
Thank you, President Dodman. Do we have a seconder? A seconder for acceptance of the written reports? I see President McDonnell.
I move as second.
Thank you very much. I do have a next hand. President Graham, did you have any comments or discussion regarding the acceptance of the written reports? You're muted, President Graham.
June Graham, Alberni Clackwood. Will there be time later to ask all the questions on those reports?
Thank you. I will turn that to, I'll ask Mr. Gull if there's a win that might be an opportunity to ask those questions.
Sorry, again, we're having technical problems.
No problems. You all the presidents on the island there causing troubles again. Is that what you're saying? No. So I just spoke with Mr. Gull. I don't think we have a specific time period for questions with regards to the written reports. I know in the past it's often an acceptance of the reports. Certainly, questions can be raised individually to the individual papers, and I'm not sure if, for example, I imagine everyone would be present, or certainly not all the individuals for the ministries, but there, as noted below the CEO report, there is time for questions there. So I think some of those questions and regarding the other areas in the reports could be directed to CEO Fontaine, and if there's anything he's not able to answer or assist, I think could make the necessary inquiries. Hopefully that helps, President Graham.
Yeah, and just to confirm, so there will be question and answer time after the CEO report. We will have adequate time for that.
Yeah, well,
Oh, sorry.
adequate will depend on how many questions, I'm sure. But there is the time set for Q&A to follow there. President Goulet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tony Goulet, President for the North Caribou Métis Association. And I'm going to be, and I would like to record that I will not be in favor of accepting the written reports. Our community did not receive a package for this MNGA. I registered. I know it's supposed to be online, but it's not online to read each one of those reports. So not having any knowledge and not being able to look at those reports, I want it noted that I will be voting against acceptance of those written reports.
All right, thank you, President Goulet. Is there any further discussion on this, on the acceptance of the written reports? I'm not seeing any other hands coming up. Given that there is not unanimous consent, we will proceed by way of a poll vote on this issue, on the acceptance of the written reports. Again, I'm not seeing any other hands come up for discussion, so I'll ask Mr. Beaker if he could raise that, and certainly Mr. Goulet, if you can make your desire, your vote made it known there. I do see President Smith, so perhaps before the poll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to note in the minutes that I'm opposed.
Thank you. President Smith?
Yeah, thank you for that, Minister Goulet. I just opened up our the reports in the MNGA 2022 link. It's closer to the bottom of the page, the MNGA 2022. The reports are there. I just wanted to point that out just for information purposes, but I respect your decision.
Sorry to interrupt. Thank you, President Smith. So Mr. Beaker, if you're ready, then we can open the poll. And this is to accept the written reports as presented. And we'll try to hopefully complete this within the 30 seconds if we can. While we're waiting for that to come through, I do note the next item on the agenda, we are a couple minutes behind, but not too bad. We do have a health break next. I'm going to suggest we do a 10-minute health break as opposed to the 15 minutes and return. So once we have the results on the acceptance of the written reports, we will take a 10-minute health break.
Okay, 10 seconds left. It looks like we have most of the responses.
It looks like Region 2 is having too much fun as well.
Okay, and the results are up on your screen. We have 23 votes in favor, 6 opposed, and 7 abstentions.
Thank you, Mr. Beaker. So that passes. I've got 3:06 on by my watch. So we will take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at, well, now it's 3:07. We'll come back at 3:17. That's 4:17 Mountain Time. I'll see you in about 10 minutes. Hello, welcome everyone. We're going to call everyone back, and we will go through the quorum, the roll call again. Again, it's in alphabetical order. Mr. Gull's going to do that, and then we'll be turning it over to President Goulet to provide a presentation from the Electoral Act Committee. So, Mr. Gull, if you can go through the roll call to establish quorum.
Just turning my camera back on here, Mr. Speaker. And so again, I'm going to run through the sort of full list in case we've lost or gained a few individuals. So beginning in Fort St. John, Jacqueline Alderking.
I'm sorry, Chris, I missed.
Oh, no, you're, I'm just checking to make sure you're here. We're just starting back again. So just checking to see if you're here.
Yeah,
Thanks.
just got back. Okay, thanks.
Thanks,
Here.
Jacqueline. David Allard.
Here, thank you.
Oh, that was quick, Mr. Allard. You're raising the bar. Curtis Belcourt. Caitlin Bird.
Present.
Thank you, Caitlin. Joy Bremner.
Present.
Darlene Campbell. Ron Caron. Don Corson. I believe Don just messaged and said he had to step out. So no Don. Kate. Sean Davern.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Davern. Louis DeJager.
Present.
Thank you, Minister DeJager. Lauren Dean.
I'm here. I'm here.
Yep, thank you. Cheryl Dodman.
Tanche.
Dr. Kate Elliott.
Present.
Monica Fisher.
Present.
Deborah Fisher.
Present.
Minister Paulette Flamond. Ryan Gervais.
Present.
Thank you, Ryan. Rainey Gervais.
Here.
Dean Gladue. Minister Gladue, are you there? Tony Goulet. Tony, are you back? Okay, June Graham.
Present.
Thank you, June. Patrick Harriet.
Here.
Susie Hooper.
Here.
Susie. Sean James.
Present.
Thank you, Sean. Brenda House. Alex Ibbotson.
Here.
Thank you, Alex. Travis Jobin.
Present.
Charlotte Lever.
Present.
Thank you, Charlotte. Richard Lewis.
Present.
Thank you, Richard. Betty Ann McDonnell.
Present.
Thank you, Betty Ann. Bonnie Merlot.
Present.
Lana Olson. I think we have Valerie Pace. I think we have Denny Paquette. Darcy Patu.
Present.
Thank you, Darcy. Trish Plant.
Present.
Joanne Richardson.
They are now moving to a situation where they are looking for targets.
Kelly Roberts.
Here.
Kelly Sears.
Present.
Mert Servatius.
I'm here.
Thank you, Mert. Dana Shaw.
I don't think, given.
Lisa Shepherd. Lisa Smith.
Here.
Jean Salzer. Joy Sundin.
Present.
Thank you, Joy. Marlene Swears. Marlene, are you still there? Okay, how about Ed Vermette?
Here.
Thank you, Ed. And Pixie Wells.
Here.
Okay, and Tony, I see you now, but I didn't hear you before. So if you just
I'm here.
confirm. Yep, thank you, Tony. Let me just change that.
Also, Dean, did you get me there, Chris?
I did not, Mr. Gladue. Thank you. And Tony. Okay. So I will just tally that, but it looks like we have quorum, Mr. Speaker, but I will do the count now. Mr. Speaker, we have 35 delegates in attendance at the moment.
Great, thank you, Mr. Gall. So we do have quorum. So we continue. The next item is a presentation from the Electoral Act Committee, report from them, and I believe our President Goulet will be leading that report. So I'll turn it over to President Goulet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if John can put up the perfect, it's coming, I see that. So we do have a slide, which I'll talk to. And again, my name is Tony Goulet. I'm the president for the North Cariboo Métis Association. And I'm honored to be presenting here on behalf of the Electoral Act. There's been a lot of great work that's been done and conversations via Zoom. So we've created a roadmap for 2022. But John, if you can go to the next slide. So as you can see on my right-hand side will be the committee members. And it was important to just have a little bit of history here as we work through the Electoral Act to just give you a sense of the dates and the times and how this act needs to be, revised and revamped for 2021. So as you can see over the time, there's been, in 2006, the MNGA authorizes to draft an Electoral Act. So the work begins on how do we conduct ourselves, how do we conduct our election process, and where do we go? It was passed in 2007 by the MNGA and at the AGM. So that act, as you can see, was done in 2007. There's been a 10-year time period where it hasn't been looked at or reviewed. There was amendments made back in 2017, which some of them are housekeeping, some of them were just cleaning up some wording and doing some outdated and updated things to the act. So elections, by-elections under this current act, and reviewing it and looking at it, it definitely needs to be brought up to date and definitely has to have some things updated to properly reflect how we're going to move forward in our next elections and how we do things as we move forward. So at the MNGA in 2021, this is how the committee came to be. So here we are. So go to the next slide. So of course, we talked a lot about what is our role, what is our work that needs to be done as this committee moves forward. Again, make sure the legislation is up to date, reflect the current realities of an MMBC election, and make sure that our citizens and candidates running for office have the proper tools and the proper mechanisms, and it's fairly straightforward for us to conduct an election. So as you can see, here we are, just giving you a report on where we are to date and just filling you in. So if you go to the right-hand side, we're looking at the time frame. So here we are, we're at the MNGA with the progress report. We have some resolutions coming forward tomorrow, 1, 2, 3 that are of importance and need to be done before. And looking at, we're going into an election right now and we're going into stuff. So we need to clean that up ASAP. So we're looking at January 2023, that we can have some more dialogue and some more changes and really get to the work of where we want to go, moving to a full election cycle. So the timeline We've had several meetings, and of course, we want to continue having meetings. I think there's lots of meetings that need to take place. There's a lot in here that needs to be cleaned up and shortened and made so that we can understand how we move forward within a great election. I see that we have 14 to 15 meetings, but I think we're going to have more meetings just about every week and every time. So I think there will be a lot of work coming in from this committee. If we go to the next slide. We talk a lot about some things to consider as we work through this legislation. You can see that the four is the citizen, the candidate, the chief electoral officer, and the Métis Nation in BC. And I think citizen was number one, because how do we, and we're going to have discussions, and there'll be more to come with how do the citizens access the ballot box, the technology, elders, all of that has to be played in and really looked at, because it's not very clear on what those parameters are, right? Mail-in ballot, online voting, etc. So really have to delve into that. And the candidate, how do we make it so that we have candidates who want to run? If we put a bunch of stuff in place in front of them, they're not able to, they say, well, that's too much. How do I do that? I don't want to be involved with that. So as you can see, it flows nicely. And then our chief electoral officer, how are we administering that election? What are they doing? What's their role? Clearly defining the process, right? And then the MBC, how does the legislation guide and how we operate during an election? As previous elections, do we stop governing? You look at provincial elections, you look at municipal elections, they don't stop governing, right? There's a period, they still do, but they don't stop everything and say, hey, we're not governing anymore. Is that something we want to look at too? So there's some more work to be done on how we look at that legislation. If we go to the next slide. So we're going into the actual work plan. And of course, our objectives here, hold meetings, discuss how we're going to move forward and make real changes here. So that'll always be ongoing and always be a document that we can work with. We need to look at identifying areas of focus from what worked, what didn't work, how do we improve on those past elections, looking at, I think, how the numbers come in for those past elections, how many had a ballot box, how many online, how many went. So those are interesting things that we have to consider as well. And of course, further research on how we look at other jurisdictions. How are they doing in elections? What's their turnout? What is their citizenship? How are they engaged? Next slide. So of course, we have coming up tomorrow some resolutions that have been presented, and these are relevant as we move forward. They're pertaining to our current election that's coming up and just cleaning that up. So we hope to have, and we will have resolutions presented to the 2023 MNGA. So that'll be coming, and that work will be done. And then the community engagement piece, because it's important that we as citizens and communities fully understand how we move to an election, right? How we engage our citizens, how we move forward in a way that we can do that together. And I'm not sure it says summer, fall 2022, but maybe that's not really a timeline. It might be longer than that. We might have more community consultations, but I think the gist of this work plan is to give us a way forward and move our electoral act discussions forward. And the last slide, I tried to sum it up so we didn't take very much time, but any questions or comments, I think I'll be happy to try and answer those. As you can see, a lot more work is to come, a lot more discussion and dialogue as we clean up the Electoral Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President
And I
Goulet.
hope that summed it up for all the rest of the committee. I wanted to make it so we weren't, the gist of it is we're working on it. There's more to come.
Thank you, President Goulet. And so I will open it up for some questions. These questions, I'm sure, can be answered by any of the other members that are on the MNGA members as well. So we can kind of work through that. But Director DeJager, I have your hand up first.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much, Tony. I wouldn't expect anything less from you. That is an awesome report, very thorough. My question is how about data? Like I've been asking, and I know the board's been asking about getting some data back from One Feather. Apparently we can get that back. We want to know what's going on per region, where we need to work harder to get some votes out, age, demographics, how many women are running, do we need to do more work there? How many women are voting? Do we need to do more work there? So when you're doing this work, I just want you to have all the tools that you can get. So is it possible you can build some kind of data form or a way of collecting data into your work plan?
I think so. I think that is a possibility. I think in one of the meetings we had, it was quite interesting to see. We did have ballot box, and what was the data from that too, right? So there'll be some work there to try and dig that information up, right? You might have to contact communities that did have ballot boxes and say how many people came out to vote, right? So we don't actually have that, and maybe the MNBC might be able to answer and pull some of that data out for us from previous elections. So yeah, definitely the data will be looked at. I think that's very, very important as we consider where we want to go with this.
Yes, thank you for that question or the idea there. Mr. Beaker, I think you have your hand up, and perhaps you can provide some background or some more information regarding the data collection.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. To answer Director Jager's comments, we have engaged with our current electoral officer to pull and compile the data, especially around demographics, around election turnout by region and also by age. This is something that was not necessarily captured in previous general elections. The information that we got back from the electoral officer was what you would have seen in the final report, which would have been the ballots cast and the elected candidates. And then you could extrapolate from, say, the votes cast for a youth or a women's regional director. You could extrapolate some of the turnout around that. We want to have that data from all ballots cast, so we can get a better idea as to what is happening when we run an election. And like I said, we're in the progress of getting that data from One Feather from the last by-election, and we should also have that data for the current by-election as well. And we will make sure that we get that data for subsequent elections going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Beaker. And I do see CEO Fontaine have his hand up, so perhaps I'll turn to him as well.
Sure, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So if I could just perhaps add a couple comments to Mr. Beaker's remarks. Minister DeJager, we definitely are going to obtain information from the Chief Electoral Officer. It is, I know, a long-standing request of the cabinet to get data. And just so for the benefit of everyone, just to perhaps quell rumors or what might be out there. So what we will be getting from the Chief Electoral Officer is obviously not how people voted. What we will be getting is the fact that they did vote. So that's really all the information we're going to be getting back. We then have to juxtapose that information into our central registry database, and that's where the work happens. It's actually not at the Chief Electoral Officer, it's with MNBC. We need to actually have enough people to do data analysis and set up the proper reports within our own registry to do that. I'm not convinced at the moment we have a robust enough process to do that, but that we're going to build it and we're going to make it happen, because I think it's incredibly important data to be able to report out post an election. And it's not that complicated, because we're really just talking about demographics of people who voted, in what regions, the age, all that kind of stuff. So it's not rocket science. It's just we have to get the data set from the Chief Electoral Officer, build the reports within our database, and then report out as part of a post-election report. So we're definitely getting closer, and I would have hoped that by the time we gather again, this data will already have been made public.
Thank you, CEO Fontaine. I next have President Wells. Any questions or comments for the Electoral Acts Committee?
Yeah, I just actually want to say, first of all, I want to thank everybody, Tony and everybody for being on that committee. I know it's, it's more work and it's added on, but it's very important stuff that we're doing. So I want to thank you guys, and I appreciate that. I just want to know if we can cross-reference the data. We're talking about data here and looking at the Chief Electoral Officer. Now, we know that we mailed out ballots. Is there a way to cross-reference that data that we already have? We know how many we mailed out or who we mailed them out to, and we know whose names they are. So I'm just wondering, it doesn't seem like can be that far away that we can actually start collecting this data a little bit more efficiently and looking at it from a perspective. We mailed out these ballots. We had to mail them out. People had to ask for them, or get a link or something. So we should know by our citizens' numbers of on their card, because they had to put that number in there. So I'm just wondering if that data can be collected a little more quickly and a little more easily by cross-referencing that data from the Chief Electoral Office and cross-referencing it from stuff we've already done.
Thank you. And perhaps I'll turn it back to CEO Fontaine. He may be able to respond to President Wells's comments there, and then I'll turn it to Director Gervais next.
Great, thank you. And excellent question, President Wells. And the short answer is yes, we can do that. This is not rocket science, as I said. It's really, we have the citizenship numbers. We know if they voted or not. We can quickly figure out if they voted by paper ballot, electronic ballot. All this information is within our grasp. And it is something that I've spoken to Mr. Beaker about beginning to download that and figure out a way of working with our registry to actually produce some meaningful reports. So it is something that I know the committee's alive to, and they're aware that there's an interest in the part of the presidents to get that information in the cabinet. So it's definitely a priority for staff, and we're waiting for that first data dump in terms of who actually voted, and then we have to do some work internally here to get start sorting that data and like you said, cross-referencing it and starting to see what we get out of that. Because I think there's going to be a lot of stories, President Wells, in there, like around who is voting and who's not voting, and then we can target our marketing, our communication, all that stuff to try to bring that number up so that we can get the overall number of people voting higher. And it's not just our government that's facing that, it's all governments. The voter turnouts are really starting to go down. People are feeling disenfranchised and disconnected. So we're hopefully going to get there. So hopefully that responds to your question.
Absolutely. I just want to thank you for answering it.
Thank you, CEO Fontaine. I next have Director Gervais.
Yeah, thank you. The Electoral Act hasn't really solved anything yet, but I know it'll probably come in the future. But there's a lot of vulnerabilities from the elders that have no experience with voting, and I'm just wondering if there's going to be anything that might be coming up in the Electoral Act that would be able to help the elders to be able to vote. Because I know there's got to be up to at least 500 elders that got voting cards. And I'm just wondering if that is maybe in the thoughts, maybe for the future to deal with it.
Thank you, Director Gervais. Perhaps I'll ask President Goulet to respond to that, or any other. Yeah, see if he's ready. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, and good question as well, because that comes back to the technology piece and the ballot box and the mail-in ballot. So we have to figure out a piece there. We have to give an option, I think, to people to allow them to be able to get that vote. It's going to take some work, I think, to figure that out, because we have great numbers showing electronic votes and not so, and then mail-in, and then very little for ballot box. So I think those discussions will be coming. I think as we move through the Electoral Act, as I said, we'll be cleaning that up. And if anybody else wants to answer from the committee.
Yes, thank you. And I did ask Mr. Beaker to put up this slide again for those of you who are maybe not aware of who your committee representative is, so that you have it there. I know you'll see all the names are there. Each representative. We now have. We didn't always have the full complement of committee members, but we do now, and so we're really happy that the committee, I think, is happy that we'll have that going forward into the new year, which will be really important. But certainly, any kind of questions, concerns, thoughts, suggestions, I expect any of the you could reach out to any of the committee members individually, or here Mr. Beaker's put it here. There's a contact or an email address that they've set up for these types of things, questions, comments, and suggestions, so that they'll make their way to the committee for that purpose. So keep that in mind going forward. I do see Mr. Gull with his hand up, and I'll turn it to him, and then I'll turn to President Wells after him.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I was originally going to make the initial comment that you did in terms of the committee members for people to reach out, but also in response to Minister Gervais. I think if you look at that committee member makeup, it's a really diverse committee, and I think that it's a great group to work with. We've got current community leaders, we've got some current board members, we have past board members, and I would call them sort of elders light. And so there's a really good group of people who are bringing some really, really diverse perspectives to the table. And so watching that work unfold, I think is quite exciting, and we'll see where that goes. But thanks for a great presentation, Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Gull. President Wells?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if that's going to be posted on the MNBC website. So in case somebody is not here and doesn't have the email address or whatever, if we're going to be able to post those names, or if the people who are on this committee are okay with having their names posted up there.
Yeah, I'm sure that won't be an issue, having the committee names, and of course there's the general email address that's been set up for comments and questions. So I'm sure MNBC would be comfortable or be able to put that information up. Are there any other questions for Tony or anyone else of the Electoral Act Committee? I'm just seeing if there's any more hands up. If not, then perhaps we'll move on to the next item. But I do want to thank President Goulet for the presentation, and the rest of the committee for the work that they've done. It's been, you'll see that I sit on that committee as well, and it's been a pleasure working with everyone there, and look forward to the continued work we do have. Not seeing any other hands, then we will move on to the next portion of our agenda. That is the CEO DM report, and lo and behold, we're only 5 minutes behind now, so this is great. We're catching up. So we'll have CEO Fontaine do his presentation, and this will be followed by the chance to ask questions. So I'm not sure, CEO Fontaine, perhaps I'll
come here.
Turn it to you how best you wish to receive questions, if you want them while you're presenting or at the end, and then we just keep track of hands as they come up, but I'll leave that perhaps to you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I think perhaps it might be easier at the end if everyone can just note their question. This is, I'm going to rattle through a lot of information in the next probably 30 minutes or so. It's a fairly lengthy presentation with a lot of material covered in it. So my apologies in advance if I'm running through and rattling off a lot of bullets, but we had a very busy year in 2021. So there's a lot to cover. And I would dare say that I've probably missed about 50% of things that we've done, but I've tried to cover off many of the activities. And my presentation today is really about just going through a timeline through the month of January through December, just as a reminder to everyone kind of where we were and where we're at today. This presentation was made to the cabinet late last year, as well as it was made to the staff at MNBC. So they've also had a chance to see this. So without further ado, I'm going to start in the month of January, just some of the activities that were undertaken. So we did start with the Métis Youth BC launching the 7th annual Métis Youth Role Model campaign that was underway. As many of you were aware, we also had to deal with the suspension of former President Del Col due to breaches of fiduciary duty. We also were planning for a virtual online AGM, which, as everyone knows, those online issues were a challenge and continue to be, but we're slowly navigating our way through the world of digital technology and getting better at that. And last but not least, in the month of January, we did announce that our front reception would be back open again to our citizens. As you're all aware, we were and continue to be still in the midst of the pandemic, but we were able to implement proper COVID protocols to allow for citizens to once again enter back into the offices. For the month of February, we had a very busy month. I'm just going to highlight a few of these items. So we had the MNBC announced a draft budget, which provided for record levels of direct funding to chartered communities. We had Dr. Bonnie Henry, the provincial health officer, attend our annual general meeting. We provided $1.875 million. We were provided new federal funding, which was announced as part of the ability for us to better support Métis citizens in British Columbia to cope with COVID-19. We announced plans for a modernization of our citizenship registry, and we made some very significant new investments in our community outreach in terms of adding actually some additional bodies. We had 0 bodies when I first started, and I believe we had allocated in 2021 up to approximately 7 FTEs to assist and to support that. So a significant growth in that area. Our Métis families in BC also benefited from a $250,000 investment in a new education program in February. We did our first regular MNBC Cabinet Town Hall Forum. That was the first one, and that was the first of many. We've had regular quarterly now online Cabinet Town Hall Forums, and we hope to take them into community at some point once some COVID restrictions are fully removed. The first mental health program for Métis Counseling Connections was established in the month of February, and there was a $300,000 allocated in the budget to provide Métis people in the province of BC with up to 10 free counseling sessions. So that was an amazing pilot project and continues on, and we're getting some reports back on that soon. MNBC also added nearly $1 million for additional community capacity and culture, which is a wonderful investment. And last but not least, a very significant move in that the vote took place in the month of February toward self-government at our annual general meeting. So that was the month of February. In the month of March, the number of activities continued. We unveiled all of our cabinet committees, which are very, very active and keep everyone here extremely busy. Not only is the cabinet itself meeting, but there are a number of cabinet committees that meet on a regular basis. So that's was announced in March. We had some new initiatives to give Métis families more input into their early years programming. We completed our budget consultation with chartered communities. And as many of you who've been around this table much longer than I will know, that up until a couple of years ago, there really was very little to no budget consultation with chartered communities. You were essentially just told what the budget was. And now we're moving towards a much better model. We're not fully there yet, but we are now doing way more consultation and listening to communities around the priorities for budgets, especially in areas where we have unencumbered funds or funds that aren't tied directly to a program that we have to implement. So we're working on that. We announced a plan, a deal with Rogers for business collaboration to support Métis-owned businesses and communities with wireless services. We announced a new citizenship card, and we also announced the Wacotouin project. As many of you know, and you probably will have seen and experienced the vast increase in the number of citizens that are now coming to you for review. When I first started about 18, 19 months ago, we were approving, I believe it was less than about 50 citizenship applications per month. As of late in the year, last year and into January of this year, we're now approving approximately 400 citizenship applications a month. So we will be on track at that rate of now accepting approximately 5,000 citizens per year, which is a significant growth and a significant change. We approved a $79 million historic budget in the month of March. We also launched a food security pilot project As well, we announced the investment of $350,000 towards a Michif language preservation, heritage, and resources. So it was an incredibly busy month in March. In April, we announced funds for a new environmental stewardship program. We honored some World War II Métis veteran, Thomas Charles Johnston. We launched, in the words of our elders, program, and also announced the new CTEM funding targeted for chartered communities. And if all of you are wondering if CTEM is a Michif word and what it means, it actually is not. It is Métis spelled backwards. So a lot of people wondered where CTEM came from. That's what it is. So just look at it in the mirror and it pops out at you. MNBC also made a historic $24 million investment in Métis housing, and you're hearing a lot of that. I'll talk about that in a moment in terms of a rollout of that throughout the whole year. And for those of you who have been here again over the last few years, you know that there was a lot of money sitting in an account and that was not being invested in the purchase of land and the building of housing. And the cabinet provided me with the directive to get these dollars out the door and to begin starting to purchase property and to actually all mortgage-free property. So we own the property outright, and then to begin looking at developing some affordable and social housing. We also announced an investment of $200,000 in a partnership with the province of BC for the Métis Nation Equity and Reconciliation Agreement Secretariat. And that's very critical because it now provided the ability for us to hire a couple staff to actually work on the beginning of a negotiation of an historic agreement with the province of British Columbia. And we've made great strides over that over the last year. We announced $2.75 million for culturally appropriate health programs. And our Ministry of Education also announced our well-being program for Métis children. MNBC also launched our new online store, the Trading Post, and that's a great opportunity for us to showcase some of the amazing works and artifacts that people would like to purchase and make it really simple. So we've done a great job since we've launched with that in April. We announced an investment of $16.6 million in early learning and childcare. Our Métis Women, British Columbia, and Métis Youth, British Columbia, announced funding of $800,000 in the month of April to go towards additional programming and engagement with Métis youth and women in the province. We also, in the month of April, the cabinet proclaimed April 23rd as Wokotowin Day in BC. Hard to believe it was only in April, but we launched MayTV. That launched on May 1st. And last but not least, our climate preparedness workshop series final report was released to the public in the month of April. In the month of May, we announced we had received a $50,000 grant to actually fund and to help us offset costs for MayTV. And the first episode did air on May 4th. We commemorated Red Dress Day and committed to Métis specific calls for justice. We also had an amazing partnership with the Terry Fox Foundation, and we're able to have the 2021 Terry Fox Run t-shirt reflect Terry's Métis heritage, which was amazing. The Ministry of Women and Gender Equity awarded funding to increase the sashing of our warriors capacity. We launched our Métis speaker series, and we had our Métis Family Connections win an actual Child Care Award for Excellence, which was very proud moment for all of us here at staff. Métis Families in Saanich, we announced that we were going to be getting a new culturally relevant childcare center in Saanich. And last but not least, our registry went paperless as of May 1st. And that was a huge accomplishment to have all of our files digitized and to be properly recorded and accessible to help speed up and to ensure that there's a more efficient processing within the registry. In the month of June, we launched a Métis version of Every Child Matters t-shirt, and very proud that we had over $75,000 in sales through our online trading post of those t-shirts. So that was just phenomenal. And thanks to everyone who bought a t-shirt or 2 t-shirts or 10 t-shirts, they were flying off the rack. So it's amazing, and what a great community effort that was. Cabinet Town Hall Forum was held online with MNBC citizens, so we continued that work. Métis Women BC and MNBC welcome the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls National Action Plan release. Our Electoral Act Committee was established, as President Goulet was just talking about. That was established in June, and they've been working like crazy since. We had our MNBC Business Advisory Committee held its inaugural meeting. And we also moved, that's a bit of a typo there in the last word, but we did move to our new headquarters in June as well. So, which was awesome. In the month of July, just flipping the chart here, MNBC announced that we're going to conduct a housing needs assessment survey. So that was announced in July, and that was undertaken subsequent to that. We announced the investment of $88,000 to the Métis Financial Corporation to help support Métis-owned businesses. MNBC announced new partnerships with OSNS Child Development Center. Our cabinet approved wave 4 of COVID funding and began the release of that through to community. And MNBC launched an RFP, a request for a proposal, for supportive care assessment service providers. So that was on. I should note, and I just realized that I did not note that the $75,000 in t-shirt sales, I didn't mention that June was the designer on that. So give her a happy face or a reaction or an applause when I'm off here. But she gets the credit for the beautiful design and for helping to trigger $75,000 in sales and generating money actually for our youth, which was amazing, just awesome. In the month of August, we very busy as well. It might have been the middle of summer, but things didn't slow down here in the month of August. We announced $400,000 to chartered communities for Métis early years programming. We announced investment of $175,000 to support Métis artists. MNBC and iSpark presented a jigging on the land. We had a town hall on vaccines were held online by staff. The Government of Canada announced new funding for all Métis governments from Ontario West. We also announced $3.9 million in new funding for skills training. I think all of you are familiar. We launched the Elder Assistance pilot program, and Métis Nation is also the first Indigenous government in Canada to launch the Lifeguard Overdose Prevention app. So the month of August was incredibly busy. Didn't slow down in September, kept going. We had a public release of audited financial statements. The board and executive expense report and board remuneration was published. We had a special online MNGA in the month of September. We announced a pilot program to assist in reducing the process time for citizenship applications. I think many of you are familiar now with the kinship program, and that's been very successful. Ministry of Women and Gender Equity released the Thanks for Listening report. We announced the mandatory vaccine policy for all employees and visitors to HQ and regional offices. We were the first government in British Columbia to do so, and I believe close to the first Indigenous government to do that as well, as an effort to help protect our staff and our citizens. The Ministry of Children and Families launched a new microsite. We also announced the Métis Youth Parliament that was going to take place in the legislature in February of 2022, but as you're all aware, with COVID, that got postponed and will now be in June of 2022. We also announced an investment of $3.8 million for the purchase of land in Kamloops for a new housing and childcare initiative. So that was done. We held another annual general meeting successfully online to ensure that everyone had access to that. And we had, which was amazing, we had Cassidy Karen elected as the president of MNC from British Columbia. So that was really nice to see. And also MNBC responded to the Manitoba Métis Federation's withdrawal from the MNC. So that's some activities that were undertaken in the month of September. Month of October. We celebrated October 1st as the beginning of Women's History Month. We also had Mental Illness Awareness Week recognized by MNBC. We had MNBC recognize International Day of the Girl. MNBC secured a little over $250,000 towards language revitalization. We had the historic Kelly Lake accepted as MNBC's newest chartered community after we went up and did a bit of a membership drive. MNBC recognized Persons Day in Canada. We also received and made publish our report on the Home Garden Pilot Project. We announced the purchase of land in Campbell River, again, to help build up our land base. We recorded a number of Métis post-secondary students. We had a record number, of Métis post-secondary students were funded by MNBC in the year 2021. We also made a big announcement on the land purchase in Fort St. John. We bought Passive House, and we're going to be moving into Passive House very soon. So we're very excited about that. And also we launched the new citizen-based funding initiative, encouraging all Métis people in the province of British Columbia to register with our central registry and become a citizen. The month of November seems like a long year when you're going through it at all these bullets. MNBC announced that we had acquired some land in Surrey, a very large tract of land in Surrey, to eventually house our new government headquarters, housing. There'll be hopefully a childcare and a gathering space. We're calling it Infinity Place for now as a working title, but we're hoping Infinity Place will be getting underway sooner rather than later. We announced the purchase of some land in Saanich, and that too will also be housing, will be a new housing, also childcare and gathering space for the greater Victoria area. We received an additional $2.75 million in COVID funding from the federal government and immediately began a plan to devolve and send a large chunk of those funds through to chartered communities for support. We announced a new rent supplement program. We announced in November the return of the Maniki home renovation program to aid with home improvements. We also, the province of BC and MNBC announced an historic letter of intent to develop the Métis Nation Equity and Reconciliation Agreement. So Minister Rankin and President Smith were on hand for that. MNBC released our 2021 to 2024 strategic plan. So that is guiding all of our work, all of the staff work in the cabinet over the next 3 years. Actually, I guess 2 years now. MNBC calls on the Government of Canada to introduce legislation banning conversion therapy. We sent a very strong letter to the government and very pleased to see that followed through on that. MNBC Métis Languages in BC Vitality Survey achieved approximately 1,000 respondents, which is incredible. We recognize National Indigenous Veterans Day. We also released in the month of November the Terry Fox Memorial Sash, which is also available on sale at our online store, and it's been incredibly popular, and it's been amazing to see the public response to that. We observed Louis Riel Day, and in the month of November, we also had a by-election that we had to organize for December 15th. And in the month of November, we committed to 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. So that was in the month of December. In the month of, that was month of November. In the month of December, last month of the year that I'll cover, we had a couple of bullets that are on here and a few more that weren't, because when I produced this report, it was kind of halfway through the month. So we did make a few other significant announcements. So we announced that MNBC had advanced an agreement with ISC, with Indigenous Services Canada, and that agreement ensured that over 30,000 MNBC registry application records will continue to be compared with the Indian registry on a regular and ongoing basis. We made that announcement. And the cabinet also announced it had approved $2.75 million in new funding to be continued for supports, COVID supports for chartered communities and for citizens. We launched our inaugural awards ceremony in the month of December to celebrate exemplary Métis citizen communities and organizations. And thanks to all of you who have submitted nominations for that. We're very much looking forward to making that announcement soon. We also announced our new Amelia Douglas Culture and Language Institute. So that was in the month of December, and that was a very large announcement. We announced as well that our old, and this is the last of all the notes, I will say that, and it was a very proud moment for me, we announced that our oldest citizen, she was 103 years old, got her citizenship card in the month of December. And I will note, I was just informed a couple of days ago that our oldest citizen has actually just passed away a couple of days ago. So shortly after she received her citizenship card, a few weeks later, she has passed on, and we have sent some flowers and sent a note to the family upon learning of her passing. So, Mr. Chair, that is what I believe is probably half, 50 to 60% of some of the work that the cabinet and the staff and our government has been undertaking. It's been an incredibly busy year, and we continue to take that pace and bring it into 2022. Things have not slowed down, they've just picked up. So there's lots to accomplish, and I very much look forward to the questions, and I hope to have as many answers as I can, and where I don't, I will follow up by way of email and provide you with the response. So with that, Mr. Chair, I can turn it back over to you to stick handle the little yellow hands in the corner.
Thank you, CEO Fontaine. We'll keep your screen on, because I see the first hand that's come up. For those of you who wish to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll get to them in order. I do have President Goulet first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thanks for a great report, CEO Fontaine. Just looking at this report and just reflecting on some conversations we had earlier as we began the MNGA, and the couple of things that I was in was around and which came up, especially with chartered communities, is communication. And I don't see communication in part of that plan. I think we get a lot of surprises and a lot of things that come our way as community presidents that we have to adapt. We have to be able to think outside the box quickly. We have to do things to swerve, which, as you know, myself, we're volunteers. We have people who, and we're fortunate that we have an office structure that can handle some of those, but I'm worried about other communities that don't have a structure in place, and we're just doing this. It was good to note. I guess I have a couple of things from your report, if I can. I just wanted to mention about the communication, because I think that's very important for us as we move forward here in 2022, and we look at everything on how we do that. A classic example under the communication I shared earlier was the phones that were given to and said, here's an announcement, but those phones haven't come to the communities yet. There was no consultation. We got an announcement. We're supposed to give them out to our members. There's things on that are posted on the website pretty fast to say, here's something that the communities are getting. So what it does is it causes memberships and people within the communities to come into those communities and say, where's mine? Where's my phone? Where's my money? Where's my stuff? Which is all coming from the MNBC and not trickling down. So I hope I make sense there. But my other thing was I had a couple, if I may. I had Métis Nation Equity and Reconciliation Secretariat. First time that I've ever heard of that term, and just was wondering sort of what the mandate is of that secretariat and what are they doing? Because I don't think that the presidents or the communities have been up to speed on that. The same as the Cultural Heritage Group. I think there's another one there that seems to be popping up. We seem to be creating these groups, and I get it and I understand because I've been around for a while, but I think we need some more communication to come out as to what are these things doing to our communities? Are they going and saying, well, we can deliver this, but maybe the communities can't deliver that. Maybe we're saying something up and saying, well, the MNBC is going to deliver it on behalf of the communities. The other is dear to my heart, and you probably know, is the citizenship. And I think going paperless may have done a disservice to some of our people, because they don't have, and believe it or not, we're in 2022, don't have access to the internet yet. Not all communities, not all areas have that ability to go online and fill out their membership application. So when they come into our office and we tell them, well, you have to go online, there's some anger there. How do they do that? We're still giving out paper applications at our office when we look at those memberships, right? So, I mean, we need to really look at how we move forward. I get the technology, but at some point we have to really figure out how do we connect with our citizens. We're losing our citizens. They can just go online now and make an application without even coming to the community. I get a community acceptance letter. Don't know who they are. Don't know if they've ever attended any meetings. We have to do that kind of stuff. So there's some real questions there. What I'm trying to get at is that don't forget the communities are here. Don't forget that there's communities that have been at this for some time, for years, 25 years, 20 years, 14 years, 10 years, and presidents who are on this call that have been fighting and advocating for the same thing. We seem to be going backwards here. We seem to have this driven process, and we're not including the communities. I said this at AGMs, I've said this and I go on my rant there about we have to involve the communities if we're looking at building a nation. That's it in a nutshell. If we continue to do this, like, we are causing disservice. I've been at it, and the last year with COVID and everything else that has happened, it's been very stressful as a community president, to be honest with you, to have people come in and say, well, the MNBC's got $250 rent for me. Where's mine? Where's this? Where's that? And those are not programs that the community level is able to deliver without funding, without all of that, right? So it causes a divide between our membership. So I just wanted to put that out there and maybe have some comments, but I'll stop my rant. I'm probably over 3 minutes.
Thank you, President Goulet. I was going to comment on the length. Obviously, we want to allow everyone to have a chance, but I do appreciate the question. And I'm not sure, CEO Fontaine, if you wanted to respond to some of that, then we'll get to the next couple of hands that are up.
Thank you, President Goulet. As always, lots to unpack there and lots of commentary, and I'll try to hopefully respond to as much of. I was taking notes while you were speaking, so I tried not to forget. So let me first start out by acknowledging that I fully appreciate that every single chartered community, for the most part, not 100%, but for the most part, are volunteer run. So there are no paid staff. There's not, a truckload of people there to kind of tap into, et cetera. So I realize that. That's one of the main reasons why we had included in our 2022 budget submission to the province of British Columbia a request for $4 million for funds that could be transferred through to the chartered communities directly to be able to support things like administration and rent and staff, et cetera. Unfortunately, when I went to the budget lockup and I looked in the line item where the $4 million was going to be for investments in chartered communities, it wasn't there. So we still have some work to do on that. So I fully hear you and I understand that. In terms of the communication, it's an ongoing and perennial issue. I hear you, and if you have examples like you've just given me, President Goulet, I like hearing those specific examples of the phones where things have come out. Like I can then go to staff and ask what happened in terms of the timing on that, because really you should be getting that information before it's actually communicated out. So, and if it's not happening that way, then we have to work harder, and we're going to have to address that and make sure that that's not the case. I will say that I have worked with Marianne, our registrar in community services, as well, our senior director for community services, Marianne Morrison, and we have talked about trying to streamline the overall volume of information coming into you. So it's not coming from 40 different perspectives. There is now a communique, which I get a copy of, that's being sent to presidents to give them more of a summary of things that are happening versus being bombarded with 1,000 different emails. But I'm still hearing that you're getting a lot of emails. So maybe we still have, obviously, I'm hearing there's still a little bit more work to do. So if you have any suggestions on that front, either for Marianne Morrison or myself, let me know. And I see Monica's comment on a weekly newsletter. Maybe that's where we can go, but we're open to adjusting. We would prefer it to be one portal in and out for you so that there's not 50 different people and that you're getting that consistent information. So I'll definitely, we can look at that. In terms of the Secretariat, President Goulet, the Métis Nation Equity and Reconciliation Agreement, as you can appreciate, dealing with any government, be it our government or the federal or provincial government, things move at a very slow pace. You'd never know that from my report last year because it seemed like we did a lot, but things move slowly. So we are working with the province to actually come up with an actual terms of reference for the actual Secretariat. So it's been this kind of back and forth. As you all know, there was the Métis Nation Relationship Accord, MNRA 1 and MNRA 2. They both were signed with the previous government, but with the provincial government. There was no dollars attached to that. There was no accountability to those relationship accord. There was no funding. There was no secretariat. There was nothing but words. They were beautiful words, and they were actually framed and they were put in the office. I got to see them every day on my way into work, but they didn't mean anything, and they didn't translate into anything on the ground for citizens. So the Métis Nation Equity and Reconciliation Agreement will not be that type of a document. It will not be that type of agreement. It's got to have some teeth to it. It's got to have something that we're actually going to be able to deliver. So I know Associate Deputy Minister Chris Gall has been working and leading the team to begin to sit down with the province of British Columbia to come up with a terms of reference of how we're going to move forward with the Secretariat. And I'm assuming that that will be made public and that that's not a secret document. It'll be a public document and it'll obviously be shared with the Cabinet, and the Cabinet will have to approve it prior to it going forward. On the paperless side, President Goulet, on the citizenship, my understanding, and I stand to be corrected, but my understanding is you can still file a citizenship application with a piece of paper. And that so the paperless component is really, once that paper crosses the threshold of our door, it gets digitized. So our own internal processes don't support paper anymore. So you can send it in by paper copy and it gets translated and digitized and put into our system. I do share your concern around going fully paperless, especially for those who don't have access to internet or a laptop, etc. So, but if I stand to be corrected, and perhaps things aren't that way, but my understanding is you could still use a paperless form, and many people still do continue to use paperless. So, President Goulet, that I think covered, I think your 4 or 5 or 6 items that you had, but if you know my number, you can always call me and reach me if there's any other questions. And you and I have always had some good spirited discussions, so I'm always willing to chat.
Thank you, CEO Fontaine. I'm going to perhaps just get you to have your pen out to take some notes, CEO Fontaine. I'll get the next couple of individuals to kind of make their point and ask questions, and then we'll kind of circle back when we've had a couple. So I'll have next Vice President James.
I'm kind of confused with regard to why are we hearing this big report from the CEO and having a question period and everything, but we're not hearing a report from our president. She is the captain of the ship, not the CEO. Just saying.
All right, thank you, Vice President James. I next have President Roberts.
Yeah, I just got a few comments on that in regards to the citizenship. Like, I applaud the fact that we've gone from like 60 to 400 a month or whatever that's being done. And I'm guessing that's new applicants. What about reapplicants, like someone who's renewing? And this is not just in regard to citizenship itself, but also the harvester itself, like the 2 documents. Myself, I'm 26 days shy of a year waiting for my renewal in regards to my harvester card, which is ridiculous. The end of September, I was told it was put out, it was sent to a printer the beginning of September. Right after, I believe his name was Brent, had taken over. He was included in a Zoom conference. 2 weeks later, I got an email that it was in the queue. Well, that was in what, November, December? Here we are like 3 months later. Still don't have it. I know someone who just received theirs on Monday who'd waited just over a year for a renewal. Now, going to looking at the new applicants, I still get calls and emails and such from people stating that they've been waiting well over 10 months for a new applicant. So where's the priority being given to? In my opinion, it's a little bit ridiculous. Like, I appreciate it's a new system, and I appreciate that there's going to be bugs and quirks to be worked out, but there's something's wrong. Like, one of the cogs isn't in place somewhere. So that's all I have to say on it.
Thank you. And perhaps before I have CEO Fontaine, we'll have another speaker first. If there's some questions, I have President Byrd.
Hi there, can you hear me? Okay. I have a couple questions, and then first it's about the reports that were in written form. So I have a question around the regional health coordinators. They were mentioned in the health report. Is that ongoing funding? Because it has been absolutely instrumental to have Destiny as part of our regional health team to support and lift up the capacity within our communities. So yeah, I just want clarity on if that is ongoing funding, and if not, I highly urge MNBC to find funding to continue that program. I have a second question around the education, the 250K new education program. I'd like a little bit more clarity on that. Education is an area that our community is definitely tapped for capacity on. We have 4 school districts that we work with, and every school district wants resources that they can add to their curriculum to include Métis content. Every time we say, let's include Métis and have Métis representation, they then turn to us and say, do you have something you can provide that can help us, that we can integrate in, especially when we are wanting to be very aware of what type of Métis content is in classrooms. And so I would really like to see some resources developed by MNBC that chartered communities can then share with school districts. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I'll probably have one more speaker before I turn to CEO Fontaine. President Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is directed to CEO Fontaine. In the 2020 MNGA, there was a resolution put forward from Cowichan Valley Métis. I'll introduce myself, Richard Lewis, Cowichan Valley Métis, elected leader. And the resolution was put forward, and it was taken off the table at the time for CEO Fontaine to review. Is there any timeline that it's going to be coming back to the table?
Could you just before could you remind me of the motion? Sorry, and repeat that again. What was the date and what was the motion again?
If my memory serves me correct, it was the resolution number 5. It was regarding the Citizenship Act for the timelines of a reply for an application of 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days.
Thank you, President Lewis. And so, President, I'll turn at this time. I've got 3 other hands, but I'll give CEO Fontaine a chance to answer the questions or comments from Presidents Robert, Bird, and Lewis there.
Okay, lots to unpack there, so I'll do my best. So the first comment was pertaining to why a CEO report. I think it's tradition long before my arrival that the CEO always does a report and is accountable to the MNGA and is here to respond to any questions on the operations side of the government. So this is consistent. I think this is consistent with past practice. So that's why I'm here. I know our president and our cabinet have had, I believe, 4 town hall forums where there are opportunities for direct questions and for reports. And I believe President Smith has done multiple public reports on the activities of the cabinet. So, but I believe this particular part of the MNGA is a requirement for the CEO to do the report. Secondly,
Daniel,
sorry.
I just add to that as well, please. If just to clarify, in my opening comments, I was focused on the governance and the advocacy we're doing at the government level. It was not actually part of the formal MNGA, and it traditionally hasn't been. But our CEO does the reporting on the operations. As the CEO, he oversees all of our staff. The only staff that the board has is our CEO, and Daniel's in charge of all the rest of our staff. So it's an operational report that is being given.
Thank you, President Smith. The next item was, I believe, President Roberts talked a little bit about the delays for things like harvesting card applications. President Roberts, I share your frustration. When I started here, I was, to be honest, I was in absolute shock that we were producing, and I'm being generous by, I think, saying, and approving 50 applications a month. I don't think we're even near there. I think we were well below that. We had massive backlogs in terms of processing times. I was appalled that we were taking 18 months, a year and a half, just to get the average application processed here. And that's why the first area that we did some reforms and started looking at making some reformations was in the area of the central registry. We were understaffed. We did not have the right systems. We had staff that were working off of old laptops, old CP units. We had very bad, slow processes that we had an old card reader that was, you had to literally kick it with your elbow and give it a thump before it would, issue a card. I mean, all these things were really not in good shape a year and a half or 2 years ago. We have made some progress, but I'm not here to say, President Roberts, we've solved everything. I'm not happy with the fact that, our processing times are now down from 18 months to a year. That's still not acceptable. Like, it shouldn't take you a year to get that. In particular on renewals, like for things like renewal cards and for harvesting cards, for heaven's sakes, you're already a citizen. You're just getting a renewal. I mean, when I get my driver's license renewal, I go into ICBC or motor vehicles, I get my driver's license within like a month, like my card comes in. That's where we have to be. That's where we have to go. And I know that Marianne and her team understand that. They've heard me talk about that, and they understand the importance of that type of speed of service and customer service when people are applying for something and they're left wondering. And the longer we wait to approve and to process citizenship cards, it feeds on itself, because people start calling, they're emailing, they're coming in and they're asking, where's their card? And then guess what? Staff are pulled away and they have to respond to that. So things just come down to a grinding halt. My commitment is we have just put in a new database that just got installed in January. Staff have been trained on it. We are going to be working with the No History group. I think once we build up and put more data into that database and we build it up, that we'll be able to do like other governing members and dramatically bring down that processing time, in particular on the renewals. That to me is a no-brainer. Like, we should be able to get that out within 30 or 40 days without question. So definitely hear you. I will say that the progress has been measured in inches right now rather than feet and meters. So, but at least we're making progress and we're getting the right people in place and making the right investments. And I'm pretty confident that in about a year or so from now, we will get those numbers down. Secondly, I will say, President Roberts, one of the things we are doing now is I'm actually getting reports on how many actual citizenships are getting approved. The cabinet wasn't even told how many were getting approved. We didn't even know what the numbers were. We couldn't even measure data. We didn't have any of that stuff. We now have all that in place. And I meet regularly with Marianne, our registrar, and we talk about getting those numbers up, making sure that we're at. Lastly, just to speak to your question on who's getting priority, they are prioritized by the last one, meaning not the one who just applied gets up first. But if you've been in the queue the longest, you're the one that's the priority to get processed. So if it is taking 10 months, it's because you were the one that came in 10 months ago to get approved. The newbies and the new ones that are coming in are unfortunately being stacked on to the other ones, but the staff are working on the older ones and trying to get those processed as quickly as possible. But I don't have a solid answer. I wish I could wave a magic wand, but this is taking time, and it will be a bit of a process, but we are making some progress on that. The next question, I think, was in relation to regional health coordinators, and I think it was President Byrd that asked that. And my understanding, and we are in the midst of a programs and process review within the Ministry of Health. So I'm very alive to this issue right now, and we are looking to just coordinate and to get a little bit better handle on some of the health funding. But my understanding is there is funding for those extensions. So, but I don't want to 100% confirm President Byrd, but I'm meeting right now with our consultants and with finance this is a very live issue and topic for me, because there's a number of staff that their contracts ended at the end of March, and some are, so we're working on getting extensions and stuff. So I don't want to get too deep into the individual personnel of staff, but suffice to say, the cabinet and a lot of our presidents have given us incredibly positive feedback about the regional health coordinators. So I know it's a priority. So it's definitely something that we've heard loud and clear. And President Byrd, I did put a link in the chat to that $250,000 education program if you're looking to just find out a bit more information on that. So that is there. And last but not least, the resolution and number 5 around the establishment of timelines on the citizenship. And I'd have to, if you can just provide me with a bit of time. I'm going to talk with ADM Gall. I just want to check where we are with the status on that. And my brain is a little bit tired this afternoon. I can't remember what ended up happening with the motion in terms of it coming back. But suffice to say, I know the initial concerns around it was we didn't want to pass a motion that would be set up to fail because we didn't have the right investments in people or systems to actually meet these particular targets. We did introduce the kinship program, which has thankfully for a core pilot group has sped up dramatically the amount of time it takes now to get approvals, but that's just a pilot and it's very small. So it definitely looks to be very successful. But I will give, if you can permit me some time, I'll get back to you on that tomorrow at the MNGA.
Thank you. And CEO Fontaine, there was also that question regarding resources that we could be provided to communities regarding where there's Métis content in school districts. So I'm not sure if that was the link that you were talking about.
Yeah, I believe that was the one that I gave.
That is the link. Okay,
yeah.
Great. I just wanted to make sure we did. So it is 4:30. I'm going to ask for the indulgence of the assembly. We have 3 hands that remain up. I'm going to ask that we kind of stay on just a little bit longer. It's not we don't always get this opportunity to ask other questions and to hear the answers as a group. So I have President McDonnell, President Fisher, and then President Bremner with their hands remained. I'll leave it with those 3. We'll have each of them ask their questions, and after the end of President Bremner's questions, then we'll turn it back to CEO Fontaine before we end for the day. President McDonnell.
Good afternoon, CEO Fontaine. I have a couple of questions, I guess it would be. Nicola Valley District Métis, by the way, sorry. When we're talking about communication, for me, I believe it's been extremely poor. Just since I've gone to speak to someone in different departments, one, I had been on a particular project to find out that person was no longer working in that department. Someone else was, who had no idea basically what I was talking about. Then one was I called someone who had been very supportive, very wonderful, who no longer is in another department else, who basically, when I spoke to him, well, okay. And my other comment, and so it would be nice if we could be let know who's now heading up this department, like announce the big changes, please, to us, not just on your website. Because I don't have time 24/7 to check the website daily or even weekly sometimes. But it's a very good website. Please don't get me wrong there. I have one more comment. It is my belief, and I'm speaking for myself, that sometimes because a lot of the staff, I can't say numbers, but are not Métis. And so when you talk to people, there's not always the same understanding and respect. And that's not always there. I was really surprised by that last week. So just if, once again, you could perhaps have a conversation. Not, but anyway, I'll quit speaking. Those are just some.
Thank you, President McDonnell. I next have President Fisher.
Hi there, Monica Fisher, Columbia Valley Métis. First, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for the report. I'll be honest, I typically don't like those reports because it just feels like a grandstand show. But I think it's also a nice opportunity for reflection. And I think if we take a moment and reflect on the last 2 years in particular and the chaos which has happened with Métis Nation and the politics and the staffing and all of the issues, and then you look at that report. It is a beautiful reflection on how hardworking our staff are, whether they are Métis or not. I think it's important to, we want quality people, and hopefully we get to a time where we have 100% Métis staff, but I want quality first, and hopefully we can build within our nation and get our citizens educated so that they are employed by MNBC. I look at, so I want to say this thanks to the staff and the CEO, the board of directors, and then all the presidents for a job well done over this chaotic 2 years. And I hope that we can continue on the momentum. I think just a couple comments in regards to the communication. I think that is across the board, some frustration that the presidents are feeling is that we are getting a bucket of water dumped on us, and in regards to information, and it would just really be nice to have a glass of water to drink. So, and I say about like a weekly newsletter, at least just with an updates, just one-stop shop. So when our citizens, or when there's different different things coming about, we can review it. So when we have citizens come to us, we don't look like idiots because we don't know what we're talking about, or they're informing us of programs that we are that are being developed, so that they're aware of and we're not. Asking the community what we're needing, and stop developing so many. I feel like we're spread so far thin in regards to developing programs, and they're operating at a minimal level because there's so many things happening. Let's focus on the programs that the citizens and the presidents are asking for, get those operating at a really good level so that we're able to have really strong programming. And then once that is strong and developed and we know what's happening, then we can develop more things. And a suggestion in regards to the harvester's card, because I feel like many citizens, even locally, are waiting for their harvester's cards. Is there an opportunity moving forward that the citizenship cards have an automatic checkbox for the harvester's cards, so that all of that information is just implemented? If they're applying for the harvester's cards, that the PAL information and all of that is on there, they provide it, it's a one-stop shop. And then it's renewed when the citizenship cards are happening. And then any of our former harvesters who are still waiting on their cards can also just have a really easy process for renewal. I have a homeless citizen who relies on hunting and loves his harvester's card, and he's still waiting for his harvester's card. And also, who is in charge of that program, and who are we contacting? Because again, like some other presidents have said, is that we don't know really who to contact for what things. So I think my time is up, but thank you. And then those are just my suggestions. So
thank you, President Fisher. President Bremner.
Hello, hello, Daniel. I don't want to repeat a whole lot of what has already been said, because out of my own community, a lot of that would also apply and be questions from us. I have a couple examples though that I do need to share with you, because I think it's important to show the depth of, what is going on and how we're building, unfortunately, a huge distrust of what's happening at MNBC. And the first one I will speak to is the fact that I get a phone call. Okay, Mid-Island has to send us a void check because we can't do automatic deposits. We've been getting them for years. So what are you talking about? And that individual argued with me, well, no, there is no check on file here. I'm thinking, and I gave in, did the whole thing. And as I'm just pushing send to send the scanned copy to the office at MNBC, oh, we found it. And I'm sorry, wasting my time as a full-time volunteer didn't sit very well. And, it's kind of like at that point it was said, oh, it's a new employee did that. Then there's another one around that whole financial piece as well. There was an automatic deposit into our account for a certain amount from part of MNBC's funding. And then I receive a check for exactly the same amount. Now, I racked my brain and thought maybe I applied for something somewhere else, right? Who knows? And I looked for a little while, and finally reached out to MNBC. And it's like, well, no, that's impossible. You cannot have had both. Our system does not allow that. So I'm as a president with the check in hand and the automatic deposit slip in front of off on my screen at my bank. It's like, well, it happened, so please don't argue that point with me. There's a reality here. And so then they asked if I would give them a bit of time to check into it. And this was not a mistake that was theirs. Currently, in the past, somehow 2 accounts were created for the Mid-Island Métis Nation. One did not have automatic deposit and the other one did. Now, again, it was blamed on new staff that there was a payment out of both of those accounts to us. One in check form and one in automatic deposit. So that's cleared up now, so that won't happen again. But I think in good faith, you have to look at us out here when we're trying to do the best job possible. I didn't deposit that check because I knew there was something wrong with that. And so rather than complicate the whole process and put it in the bank, rather than trying to get the answers to that. So, and effectively, I oppose being told it's new staff. Because if it's always new staff creating these issues for us out here, who's doing the training of the new staff? Maybe there's a slippage there that just is not quite up to snuff and what it needs to be, especially when it starts being around financial pieces, because that's so important to all of us out here. And again, following along that financial piece, it's very difficult when we get all of these small sums deposited to our accounts and stuff with very short notice on okay, you get to spend this on this item. And if the only thing we're doing in terms of funding basically is MNBC funding, that would be fine. But the MNBC funding is only a very small portion of the funding we have to go through our office. So it's almost a drama for my staff. Like, how are we supposed to spend this money in this short time? And again, I will say again, we appreciate the money. Don't take me wrong, please. There is that aspect of it. But again, that starts to be around financials, really. It's like there are some concerning portions of what's going on there that complicate our lives out here. So I'm not sure if you going forward, can take a more serious look at what is going on in that department and how that perhaps could be fixed. And then an interesting one that came to my office directly to me, someone walked down the hall from another business that's in our building and said, "Joy, have you ever heard of this trading post?" And I said, "Well, yes, I know there's a trading post that Métis artisans are on and sell all of their works." They said, "Well, no, this trading post is asking for a discount on their orders as a business." And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go looking. So that communication went to them with no clear identification that it was from MNBC's new trading post. And I wasn't currently aware because I had, as I went looking, then I said, oh, it's going to be opening soon. And so communication issues don't just stem to our communities, it's also outreaching it. And I think even if all these changes are occurring, they're occurring so quickly, perhaps staff are having difficulty staying on top of it in a positive way. So that's the sort of things I wanted to comment on, and thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, President Bremner. There was one more hand up that just came up, so perhaps I will turn it very briefly to Vice President Shepherd, but if you can keep it to 2 minutes, and then we'll turn it to CEO Fontaine to respond to the questions that have been asked.
Yes, I can do that. Thank you. I just really wanted to land on what Betty Ann spoke of, because I think that what she had to say is just so important. There's a history and trauma-informed approach that our own Métis people are able to live by because of their lived experience. It's so nuanced and it's so complicated. And, there's a trust in connecting with Métis people that already know and speak respectfully when they speak to our Métis citizens. We don't have to educate them culturally on what that means to, the way that we're talked to. When we talk about all my relations, it's just so important to our experience as Métis citizens that there is a sense of our own people, being on the other end of the phone when we're calling MNBC. it gives us a sense of equity in knowing that there's capacity that's being made for our own Métis people. And I think, like, at the end of the day, we're here to serve our Métis citizens as an organization. That's the whole point. And, the reason why we receive funding from government. So, and I just want to make sure that what Betty Ann said, like, I hear her loud and clearly what she's saying. And I really would love to see, an increase in Métis citizens working for MNBC. And I don't say that disrespectfully to many of the fantastic employees that we have that are allies, that are non-Indigenous or are non-Métis. I don't mean it in a disrespectful way. I just think that there's lived experience that we have, and there's that natural trauma-informed approach that is taken. So I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Shepherd. And I'll turn it back to CEO Fontaine to respond to those last few questioners.
Sure. Thank you so much. All very, very good questions. Perhaps I'll just start first. I will start a little bit working backwards and maybe address Lisa's comments in terms of the issue around Métis staff. So I have heard that, and I just want to let everyone know that I have instituted a process whereby anybody who's hired within the nation, I now ask a couple of key questions. I ask how many Métis people applied for this position? Was there any qualified Métis individuals? Were there any people more broadly who are Indigenous that have applied? I do ask that for every single application that comes in. And sadly, far too many positions that come in have zero Métis applicants. It's hard for me to put my finger on it. I just see so many faces here today, and I know that you have lots of contacts and people within your community, and we're trying to be more flexible around, work in regions, etc. But even with that, even when we're posting positions that are not here in the Surrey headquarters in regions, we're still getting a really low rate of pickup in terms of respondents. And from everything I've read, it has a more broad discussion around the overall labor market. I've got friends who are also CEOs or also run companies. It's just a struggle right now to get qualified people in general, and even more challenging to get qualified Métis people, given the small population base within the province of British Columbia. So I'll once again make a direct plea or a request or a hope that if you see these postings that are on the website, by all means, please refer people to those, and let's get the total number of applicants and referrals up. We have been going a little bit up because we're now using employee referral programs to get our own Métis citizens and our allied staff, if they're aware of Métis individuals who are qualified, we're encouraging them to get them to apply, to actually to put their name forward. I know I was just looking at the statistics for just the last 3 months, for example, just by way of the last 3 months for December, January, and February. We hired 11 new Indigenous staff, of which 8 were Métis out of those 11. And of the 8, 6 of the 8 were Métis women. So the team is trying, all of our managers are trying as best as possible to get there, because I do hear Betty Ann and I do hear you, Lisa, as well, just around the issue of making sure that someone on the other end understands and is empathetic and understands our culture and our community. So definitely there. So I'll start back at the beginning. I believe the first, some of these were more comments. So if I don't respond back to the comment directly, I've noted the comment and I have heard that. But in terms of going back a little bit to the communication theme, we are looking at, so we're doing 2 things. One is we're completely revamping our website. So the website itself is very old. It looks newer, but it's actually quite old in the back end, and it's very old in its formatting. So we are going to update the website and try to make it more user-friendly. And I agree, I can't remember who made the comment. It's got a lot of good information in it, but it can be better sorted and better searchable. And there's a lot of other things that the website can do. And I think it's always good for every few years for you to refresh and to look at what you're doing. But we're also trying to look at a kind of a chartered community or a president's portal, where we can update information on that portal in real time with new information, new programs, things like that are happening that aren't going to bombard you with more emails, but will be there more as a passive place if you want to log in and go check in to see what the latest information is. So we are working on that as well. And I'm hoping we'll get that done sooner rather than later, but our communications team are aware of my interest in doing that. And we're building that into the operating budget for the next fiscal year. President Fisher, just thank you very much for your comments for staff. It's been a very long 2 years for not only our chartered communities, but for our staff. They have been expected to do a lot in COVID, and they've been asked to put in many hours. A lot of them, put in overtime and put in an incredible amount of dedication to making sure that their programs are running efficiently and that our people are getting paid on time. And so I appreciate you recognizing that for staff. I know that means a lot to the staff that you've recognized them. So I do appreciate it. And my goal will be to try to have you stop drinking from a fire hose and drink a glass of water. That's a great analogy. I will try to get that glass. And I think that's a great way of describing it, because I know drinking from a fire hose is not fun at all. And it just to kind of get all wet and it doesn't really work. So let's try to get you that glass of water. And I also heard you, President Fisher, just around the issue of the focus on programs. And what you're going to see in the next year, and I've already talked to the cabinet about it, is we've been going at such a pace. Like, we've grown so fast. We've expanded and we need to let our systems and our technology catch up with that growth. So I've told the cabinet already, even if you'll see it reflected, I believe, in the operating budget next month, is we need to catch our breath a bit. Even here, we need to catch our breath. We can't do everything for everyone. It's just impossible to do that. And if we tried, we would fail. So you're going to see the pace slow down a little bit as we use technology to catch up. And then perhaps in the following year, we'll continue on. But everything we're doing is guided by the strategic plan. So I'm trying to encourage all of our senior executive management team to look at the strategic plan. If it's not in the strat plan, if it doesn't fit with that, we have to ask ourselves why we're doing it. And I agree that we have to focus more on a limited number of programs, doing them really well, and then being able to catch our breath. So next year, you'll likely see a lot less kind of new programming and more around getting that consolidated and making sure that we're delivering on the programs that you're interested in and that our citizens are interested in as well. Great idea on the harvesting card, connecting with the citizenship card. I don't believe Mary Ann's on, but I will talk to her about that. I have a few ideas on that too. Again, not rocket science. I think there's a lot of things innovations we can do with these cards to speed this process up so that it's not taking people so long. And I will say that I know it might be a bit of extra work for our regional directors and they might kill me for doing this, but if you are experiencing or your citizens are experiencing lengthy delays in this, please inquire through your regional director and they will come to me, and a number of them have. So where there's been issues, I will talk to the registrar and I'll see, where is that application? Why is it taking so long? We will have those discussions. So please, if someone's really experiencing something well beyond what should be a normal time, let's take a look at it and let's see if there's something that's been missed. And that will help inform, I think, Mary Ann's work and the team there in terms of trying to speed up that process. I also heard, and I didn't reference it earlier, and that was around an org chart and knowing where we are and who we are and trying to reach people. Believe it or not, that's been one of my goals over the last year. And I believe it finally is done now. We actually do have finally an org chart that shows where each department is, who's flowing into whom. So I've made a note to, we're sharing that internally now within our own government and within our senior management team, but putting that out online and in particular so people can understand who's going where. But Amy Flemmer, who's at our front reception at our with the 1-800 number, she knows where to go, and she's a good kind of stick handler and being able to navigate you through places. So if all else fails, you don't know where to go, by all means, contact Amy. She does have customer service kind of in her title now. She's there to make sure that people have a good experience when they call our government and that she can help navigate. So definitely contact her, but I will try to get this org chart up and running and put out onto the website kind of as soon as possible. Joy, thank you for those, President Bremner, thank you for those comments. I never like hearing that. you know, I strive for perfection, and I know even if I don't get there, at least I'm kind of maybe 75% of the way there. But I'm going to follow up with our finance department just around that. I'm going to inquire a bit more as to what happened and check with our senior director of finance. You know, I don't like hearing it, so I will follow up, and you have my assurance that it will be part of my discussions with the finance staff. And also, lastly, I believe that was the last comment I had here, was around who is training the staff, who's training the new staff. And we are looking at that. That's an area that we know we have a bit more work to do. So we now are working as a central services team to make sure that as staff are onboarded, that we're doing a bit more robust training. So we have, because of our pace of growth, I don't believe we're doing enough at the front end to be training staff when they're onboarding, both cultural training, cultural awareness, as well as actual programmatic and administrative training when they're onboarded. So I've identified that, and so has senior management, and we are working to change that. So we're going to be working with HR over the coming months to implement a much more robust training system. And we're also going to look at using digital government, our Ministry of Digital Government, to help support that, so that our training modules are digitized. So when staff are onboarded, they can get a cultural awareness training program, and it's something they can watch on a video online and at least get that, and maybe have more exposure to some of our elders, etc. So those are all things that we're very live to and aware of, and it's definitely been flagged for me before. So that's a long-winded answer to a number of comments and questions. So hopefully I addressed all of them.
Thank you, CEO Fontaine. I do note the time, just shy of 5 o'clock Pacific. And so we're going to adjourn here in a second. I do note some of the questions and comment periods that we've had during this last section. I let go a little longer. It's not often that we get to have the direct opportunity to ask questions and to hear of our CEO. And so I certainly want to allow some flexibility and make sure that we had people had ample time to raise their concerns and questions. Tomorrow I'll be a bit more quote unquote strict with the time limits during the debates of our resolutions and whatnot, but I am glad we were able to get those questions asked. So I do see Mr. Gull with his hand up. Perhaps something before we have to adjourn, Mr. Gull?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, just while we have CEO Fontaine, I note Betty Ann McDonnell has noted that I'm not sure if she felt like her question was quite answered, and I wasn't sure if she wanted to just circle back with that really briefly while we had the CEO here.
Do we have
in the chat?
I see. President McDonnell, are you still on?
I am. I think I was a bit thrown off because David, you were laughing at something off camera when I was speaking, and I thought, uh-oh,
no.
Am I making a fool of myself again?
Never.
Anyway, but no, I feel kind of shrugged off. I don't get my concerns were answered. One concern was most definitely answered by Lisa, and I hold my hands up. She spoke much more eloquently about it than I can. And I really, really appreciate that. But as for the rest, I don't feel that it was.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, perhaps I'm not sure if everyone else is experiencing this. I can barely actually hear Betty Ann. Like I can hear a little bit, but I'm hearing like one of every fifth word. So it's really a challenge for me to actually hear Betty Ann. So I don't know if it's our technology or speaker, but
there's certainly some cutting out.
Likely mine. I'm working on a Chromebook. My computer crashed last night. So, but anyway, I will leave it at that.
You were much clearer there. I don't know what you did, but now I can hear you perfectly clear. So.
All right. Well, thank you. And so I do appreciate all the questions we had. So we will adjourn to tomorrow morning, according to the agenda. That's 8:30 Pacific time, 9:30 Mountain time. That's when we'll be taking the roll to establish quorum tomorrow morning. So I look forward to seeing you all in the morning. And I'm very curious. I'm also looking forward at the end of the MNGA. I see some people. I see it looks like beating going on. I'm very curious. I want to see where those projects end up. President Fisher, I see you as one of them. And
Lisa has to go offline if I'm going to show you my beadwork.
Never. That is never true.
All right. Well, with that, we will adjourn until tomorrow morning. See everyone then.
Thank you, everybody.